Well, hi, this is Val Campbell, and I have been doing a lot of thinking lately about the whole Charlie Kirk situation. And I posted something within the last couple of weeks, a list of my concerns having to do with what we were being told in the official narrative and how it didn't make sense. There are hundreds, probably thousands of posts now on YouTube and in various um, social media platforms of everybody talking about this, and I think that that's great. I think that it's important that we continue to keep this up front and center. I'm concerned about public fatigue. This is a psychological process that's known, and I think that the bad guys are counting on it. They're counting that this is going to get so overwhelming, that there's going to be so much about it. And then after a time, people are just going to get numb. It's going to like, I don't want to hear about that anymore. I want to get on to the next thing. We've seen this over and over again in history. Obviously, the bad guys are aware of the psychology of the public. And I think we need to really, really keep that in mind from all different angles. But I can't let this thing just totally go. I don't want to be posting every day and talking about the latest thing or the latest theory or what this person's saying or what that person's saying, right? I've really held off of that, although I have been talking to a lot of people. It's a subject on the street. So, as you're running into somebody, you're saying, gee, did you hear this thing or did you see this latest thing? I want to point out that there is a principle at stake here, a principle at play. And that principle is, well, first off, there's innocent until proven guilty. And then there's a second principle that I think is very, very important here, and it is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And this becomes very critical in this case, because as you have hundreds, thousands of people, thousands, tens of thousands maybe, I don't know, that are looking at this official narrative. I was at the dump today, literally of all places, the transfer station. We're throwing cardboard in the recycle bin, and I strike up a conversation with the guy next to me, and he's a hunter, and we're talking about this. And he said the same thing. He said, look, I don't know exactly what happened, but there's no way. There is no way that was an entry wound from a 30-06. He said, I hunt with a 30-06. I've seen it tumble deer straight over backwards. I've seen that ballistic round. He said it would have made an enormous hole coming out the other side. And there's no way that anything involving a human neck is going to stop it from exploding out the backside. But this is this guy's thing. He is a hunter, hunts deer with a 30-06. I've shot 30-06. I've shot 30-30s. I've shot 7.62 by 39s, all 30 caliber rounds. We know what this ballistic does. Okay. The whole scenario of this, we might have disagreements on the rooftop question or this or that or something else. But there are thousands, tens of thousands of subject matter experts, maybe not on the whole realm, but in individual pieces, who have tremendous amounts of experience, who have looked at this and said, there's no way that official narrative makes zero sense. It doesn't make any sense. So how does that play into this idea that they're rushing this kid into the legal system, this Tyler Robinson, rushing this guy into the legal system, and they have publicly announced that they're going to seek the death penalty? How does this not prejudice juries? This is too big of a trial. This is too big of an issue. Everybody knows about it. Everybody's got an opinion. How does this become an impartial jury? This is just bizarre. In fact, that's what another thing this guy said. He said, I don't see any way that they don't find this guy guilty just because they've got to pin this on somebody. They got to move it through. And I said, that might be the case, but the more of us that are talking about this, the more people that are standing up and not giving in to media fatigue raises the bar with the bad guys. And we all know who a lot of them are. We don't need to go down that path because I don't know who's the specific here, but there's some in our government, some in every government. These are the underground people. These are the alphabet companies or the alphabet agencies, right? You know what we're saying. And that's who plots and plans these things for whatever purpose we don't know exactly. But beyond a reasonable doubt becomes a really, really important thing here. And the reason I say that is because, and go back and refer to my other video if you wish, I listed a whole bunch of doubts there, maybe about 8 or 9 of them. Really significant. These aren't small things. Things that just don't make any sense. So, some people know that I'm an author and I write books. I've written 9 novels, 8 of them about a team of mercenary assassins. Let's call it what they are. They go after the bad guys, the cartel people, the traffickers, and they kill them. They get rid of them. They plunder their accounts. They save the victims. They go and get the girls out, but they kill the bad guys. And many of these involve very, very intricate operations where I've had to spend many, many, many hours planning on how would you do this. Now, I want to point out a couple of things that probably seem obvious, but I think that it bears stating. One of the things that you do if you're an operative, if you're putting an operation together, and I will tell you, the minute I saw this, the first couple of things that came out on this, that's what my brain said. Boom, click, a little click. I said, well, that was an operation. That wasn't some Twinkie up on a roof. That was an operation. Now, I'm going to go into that in just a little bit. One of the things you do is you create distraction. Sleight of hand. It's like a magician, right? You distract people in one attention with one hand while you're moving something with the other. You become so good at it that people don't see it. Or everybody looks at one direction, but actually the real event is coming from a different place simultaneously. And this is what happens when you're planning this type of an event. I've studied some of the ones that were done by specific agencies around the world where people knew, they knew who did it. They never caught the individuals because those guys disappear. And that's what they do. The other thing is you make sure that somebody else gets blamed for it, and you make sure that all of the potential evidence is destroyed. There are certain principles here, and this is why I say the first thing I looked at, they said, oh, that's an operation. Now, I don't know all the players. I'm not saying that. I don't want to get into that because there's a lot of that going on. Oh, it's this country. It was that country. It was these guys. I don't know. But looking at those bits and pieces, that was the first thing. It was just that little ping in my brain. Oh, wow, that was an operation. Okay, so what happens is you create this diversion, and while everybody is looking at that, or simultaneous to the diversion, the deed gets done. Now I'm going to explain to you one way that this could have happened here. And I've actually seen some other people talk about this, but right off the bat, I looked at this and I started sending messages to my sons. I said, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I've avoided talking about this, but I want you to know that there is a weapon, a gun, if you call it that, called a PCP. That's pre-charged pneumatic. It's basically an air gun, and there are pistols, there are handguns, there are rifles, there are various types of ballistics, in all the way from 177 all the way up into 54 caliber, which is, big as your finger. And these can be suppressed, often are. They're almost silent. It sounds like your hand clapping. And the ballistic on those is traveling only at about 500 feet per second. Now, the 30-06 round at that distance, at that point, was traveling about 2,600 feet per second with 2,300 foot-pounds of energy. What we're talking about with a PCP weapon is much, much less. Still very, very deadly in the right hands, but quiet. You would never even know, especially if you used a remote triggering device to set off a ballistic. Now, these are very, very common. They're easy to get. I think you can order them on Amazon. They're a remote electronic device that sets off, they're a detonator for detonating explosives or, whatever. They sometimes can be operated off of a cell phone. There's various ways that you can trigger those. But if you paired one of those to a PCP weapon, this becomes a very, very easy thing to execute a mission, an operation like this. You're behind, somewhere in the background behind. I heard one guy comment that there was a van back there underneath the kind of the back facade off to the left-hand side. If you face the stage off to the left-hand side, that's the kind of a thing that I've done in some of my missions where they are sitting in the van. They open the door. Doesn't need to open more than just a little slot, and boom, and then they close the door. These are things that are known, right? I didn't invent this stuff. This is what they do. I just used those tactics in some of my scenes in my books. And when you have that tied to an electronic trigger, a detonation device, and you could have something up there on the rooftop. You could have somebody holding it even. Didn't need to be a rifle. Wouldn't be a rifle. But at the same moment that you were firing that PCP weapon behind Charlie Kirk, that sound would be going off. And the distraction of that, the entire scenery, nobody would see you back there. They wouldn't hear you. They would all be focused in another direction. All of the appearance would be up there. And then they just finish staging the thing. Somebody runs across the roof, gets picked up by security cameras, jumps down the other side, runs off. They've got a weapon already staged out in the woods. This is a relatively straightforward operation. Now, is that what happened? I don't know. I'm just letting you know that we understand how to conduct this type of an operation. This isn't particularly tricky as operations go. Pretty standard fare. How does that affect this idea of being beyond a reasonable doubt when all of the official narrative is full of doubts? And we've just presented an entirely plausible scenario that would explain the exit wound in the neck. It would explain the damage to his upper spinal column. It would explain all of this. What can you say? How does that not provide reasonable doubt? I don't know. I don't know where this is going. I don't know if I'm actually going to post this video. But I just wanted to sit. I've been thinking about this for days, and I thought, I'm going to go ahead and put this together. And I think that there is something here that bears consideration. This is Val Campbell. I will see you on the next video. Keep the faith. Do not lose the interest in this matter, because it's very, very important.